Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? Sometimes things just happen. And sometimes those things that may seem innocuous at first end up working out in the end. And as a news story went around that someone was trying to trademark the word Fursonas over social media, there was a bit of anxiety within furry fandom about whether or not the term Fursona could become trademarked. But luckily for us, as it turns out, while a new entrepreneur who had nothing to do with the fandom apparently, but understood that the word had connotations to it, tried to take Fursonas, a word that's very important to the furry community, and use it and tried to trademark it, they failed in their endeavor. What was the thing that caused them to fail in their endeavor? Well, it was more weird and precarious than most people might think. It was actually because another furry had already trademarked a brand with the word Fursona in it. That's right, Fursona Pins. You know, those little things that you stick on yourself. The entrepreneur who created the concept of Fursona Pins and where you can make your own customized pins had trademarked Fursona Pins and basically did that. So we're going to go over a little bit of a detail on that. Here is the screenshot of the case. Basically, the case right now is in a rejection status. The person tried to file for this in November of 2025. This is not really the case from what we can see of what's called patent or trademark trolling, where a person was trying to take this word and basically, file a bunch of lawsuits at a bunch of furries for using the term Fursona, because there's a difference between trademark and copyright, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do have some nuances, and I do understand some of the terms and some of the nuances that most laymen might not, like the concept of, assault versus battery and what the difference between the two things are. And that's what that one I think is the most misunderstood. Like if you're talking with a common person versus a lawyer, like the difference between assault and battery, they're so common that usually the phrase is said together, but there is a difference between assault and battery. They are two separate things. They tend to happen together, but they are not the same thing. But they don't have to happen together. It's in there's a whole technical thing. I'm not a lawyer, so I won't go into it. But from my understanding, assault is the approaching of I'm going to do violence to you, and battery is actually physically acting it out. So those are those kind of weird nuances are things that can get lost to the layman. The other thing with trademark and copyright is that a lot of people get the two things confused a lot, and particularly furries we're laymen, we're doing things like that. But the difference between a trademark and a copyright primarily is what the intent of the thing is and what they're supposed to protect. A copyright's supposed to protect an artist or a creative person from having their works copied and used without their permission by another party, basically without any sort of agreement, right? I can't take, legally, I'm not supposed to be able to go take a copy of a work that some furry artist did and paste it as my own, or even share it as my own, or publish it in places without that artist's permission. Things like that. It's supposed to protect a copy of the creative work. Trademarks, they more fall of branding. Usually they're phrases or things or logos that are tied to a specific brand that are supposed to signify a brand or signify a group or an individual or a business, to help them sell their wares and inform their customers of who they are. in the flimsiest sense, trademarks can be used for a lot of things, and things get really technical. And as I said, I'm not a lawyer, so do your research and like read up on your copyright and trademark things. The reason that you have to be able to distinguish between the two is that a lot of furries, on the internet, when going like with the whole trademark thing, and the thing that they feared with Fursonas being trademarked is like, oh, like they're going to prevent us from ever saying the word Fursonas again. And the interesting thing is that what I really like about the response from the trademark office is it actually really is nice, and it kind of really breaks it down, and it actually kind of says it in kind of plain language that is kind of easy to understand. So if you go to the link in the description, you'll go to my article. In there, it'll have a link to the document of the rejection letter from the trademark office to the applicant. And basically, from the context of it, it is a response. Like, they rejected it. The applicant sort of appealed and sort of made his counter arguments as to why the applicant should be able to, file for a Fursona as a trademark. And they were able to what we're seeing is sort of like a third letter in the chain where the applicant is being rejected again. They're sustaining the rejection. The trademark office is saying, you made a counterclaim. We're maintaining our rejection, and here's our counters to your counters, right? Or just kind of explaining it again. Primarily, they're probably explaining it again. They probably explained it to him the first time, but they're kind of breaking it down even further. So it's a really easy read, and it's nice because basically there was 3 arguments that the patent was making. As I said, if you want to get this information faster, it's in the written article. But basically he was saying, well, I'm trying to do Fursonas and not Fursona Pins. And the trademark office was like, that's too close, right? The distinguishing thing is Fursona Pins. If there's a word Fursona in a trademark, and somebody else tries to trademark Fursona, like the common consumer might see that as a derivative, right? Like, oh, Fursona and Fursona Pins have to be like the same company because like they have a similar name. Similar to how like if there's a trademark for like Pepsi and I make a company called Pepsi Books, right? I couldn't successfully trademark Pepsi Books because even though I'm selling books and Pepsi's selling soda, like the common consumer would probably get confused and go like, oh, Pepsi Books, that must be the same company that owns, like, must be done by the same company that's Pepsi, right? So the explanation, and by the way, when you read the document and read between the lines, that Fursona Pins trademark that was made earlier, before this guy tried to, do Fursonas, is actually the thing that they highlight and they emphasize is the primary reason that they rejected this trademark application. Now, a lot of furries might go, that's kind of weird. Like, how can you copyright words? But as I said, or how can you trademark words that are common vernaculars? But here's the thing, as I said, trademark's not copyright, right? Like, having a trademark on something cannot restrict the usage of words. They can't, like, you're not going to get violations if you say, like, if I say Pepsi or Coca-Cola or anything like that, I'm not going to get like, oh, you can't say those words. They're trademarked, right? So you can't say them. That's not how that works, right? If I were trying to sell a soda product and I put like a logo or a name on it that's tied with a current soda company, that's when I get in trouble, right? If it's using it with the intent to mislead that you are part of a larger organization or business that, has like development and things behind it. So similar to the whole like things, if I were to sell pins and then I would say like, hey, buy some Fursona pins. So here's the interesting thing, right? If I were, as a furry, made like pins with furries on them, and then I said anywhere in that website, even if I didn't call my site Fursona Pins, if I said anywhere in that website, like, hey, get pins of your Fursona, or hey, buy some Fursona pins, Like, even if I just said it in just a paragraph, that could be a trademark violation. Fursona Pins could say, hey, look, he's using the words Fursona and Pin in there. This, even if I'm a furry, even if it's inter-furry, right? Even if I'm doing that, that's where trademark comes into play, right? If I say Fursona Pins to my friends, or I say Fursona Pins on a video talking about Fursona Pins, like, that's not what the intent of trademark protection is. Right. So in the article, I come up with a big example of outside of furry, one that kind of I get angry about. So don't worry if you get frustrated about this stuff. I get frustrated about it too. But a very good example is of the word meta. Right, Meta is trademarked. Meta is trademarked by the company priorly known as Facebook. Right, because Mark Zuckerberg tried to coin the word meta to talk about virtual reality and things like that. And so it's sort of like he wanted to call it the metaverse, and he wanted to like make meta, systems and things. And so like he trademarked, see, I almost did it myself. He trademarked Meta to tie itself with that product line from his Meta, formerly known as Facebook company. And the reason it ticked me off a little bit is because, like Fursona, there's a tie of that word to other meanings in like scientific things. Like the concept of meta is actually very long ago, but more recently, metadata, the meta, as it were, in like if you're talking about like gaming, right? The meta is sort of the mechanics behind the things and sort of the optimization of mechanics by the players. What's the current meta, right? A gamer might ask another gamer, and that means like, what is the current way that gamers play the game to be sort of optimal behind the scenes? Like to the layman, they might not see that. The layman can still have fun playing the game, but the meta is for the people who are really know the advanced mechanics of the game in the background and could come up with like sort of optimal strategies, and that's called the meta. For computers, right, there's metadata. Like this video has how long is the video, how many colors and pixels, and where is that colors and pixels as, what was used to record this, when was it uploaded, when was it shared with the public, all this data and all this information. Like what is the tag of the video on the address bar. Like all that information is metadata. And metadata is the concept of data. Like if you take a photo, like your camera might record for that photo information like the GPS location where you took the photo, what date was it when you took the photo, like what time, like, and all this like different, like what kind of camera took the photo. Like a photo information from a camera might save a bunch of metadata so that people who are needing to use it for putting it in a program or doing things with it might come to might be able to do extra things with it in programs and things in the background, which is why metadata is important. It's data that's sort of hidden from the average user, but is useful to people who are doing things with it. That's a concept of meta. Meta is like sort of like a prefix in that way, but even going further back, like Greek and concepts of early humans would consider the prefix of meta to be used for like the metaphysical, right? The concept of like the not within this world space, like it's outside of the world space, metaphysics and things like that. So like I say all this because it's frustrating, because it's like those are good words. Those are words that are commonly used, and it feels weird that a company would try to take a word that has a meaning and try to incorporate it into like sort of feeling like they're taking ownership of the word for their own branding and things. But as is written in the response to the Fursonas thing, they do talk about how the word Fursonas is used by our community to describe our characters, our furry personas, right? Our Fursonas that we use to express ourselves to the world. And because of this, we have a common words in that, like, So the element of it, the interesting thing is, like, a lot of people were saying on, like, as I said, people were confusing copyright with trademark and saying, well, they can't do that. Fursonas is used by our community to discuss animal characters. They can't copyright, they can't trademark that word. They can't restrict that word. And that is, yes, that is true. But trademark doesn't, as I say, restrict the usage of that. I can still say metadata. I can still say metaphysical. And there's not a dang thing Mark Zuckerberg can do about it. Because those are concepts and things that are commonly used words that have nothing to do with meta products. The only time Mark Zuckerberg can come after me is if I go, well, I am going to make a, like, say I make my own VR device and I put the word meta in it. Like, I call it the Metavisor or something. Then Mark Zuckerberg could come after me because I created a thing and used a word in a product that is tied with a company that has a trademark on it. That's when things get a little dicey and can get a little dangerous. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta can't come after me if I talk about the metaphysical universe and, like, some sort of philosopher, or if I talk about metadata or the usage of metadata. He can't restrict common used words that are already in use. Similarly, if somebody were able to successfully trademark the word Fursona, the person who has the trademark on the word Fursona couldn't come after furries who are using the name in the way that it was always used prior to the engagement, and that is something that's alluded to in the trademark office's response, right? That's not, like, the fact that Fursona exists is not or Fursona exists and it's used in a community sense is not anything that the trademark office was really taking into consideration when saying, no, you can't do that. Because the trademark office only cares if somebody else trademarked it first, right? That, like, for the purposes of business and recognition of that business. The primary concern that they had was that the Fursona pins already existed, and having something called Fursonas is just not that. Their third argument that he made, so there was 3 arguments. Remember, there was, that furry already existed in the furry community, and that he thought he was being snubbed because of that, and they said, no, that's not the reason. Fursona pins existed. He's saying, I just want to have Fursonas. I don't care about Fursona pins. I'm not selling pins. And they said, well, it's too similar, right? The whole example, what I gave with Pepsi books, right? It's too similar. It could cause confusion to the average consumer. And so, like, the purpose of a trademark is to make sure that there's clarity on where a product or service is coming from. Or, like, who has ownership of those kind of own those kind of things in businesses. So the third thing that they mentioned was, well, I'm making robes and they're making pins. It's a different product, and there's not going to be confusion because we work in different spaces. But similar to the example that I gave, sort of impromptu with the Pepsi and the Pepsi books, it doesn't really matter that I'm selling it in different spaces. Like it doesn't matter if Fursona Pins is intended for a furry audience and that, Fursonas is intended for a different audience. It could cause confusion if the products are sold in a similar space, right? And it doesn't have to be the same space. It could be a similar space. And, like, the intention of who the target audience is not of concern of the trademark office, as they wrote in that response. It is more that they needed to make sure that they protect the Fursona Pins trademark that they have already enacted. So it's interesting, and it's very it's very interesting that it was the work of one furry group of, like, the Fursona Pins people who trademarked their own thing and did that busy work and paid that money to do that. That we have to be thankful to Fursona Pins for protecting the word Fursona from outside things. Though, I will say this, that means Fursona Pins has a lot of power in the furry fandom as well. And I hope they use that power wisely. I think they will. I don't foresee them doing anything nefarious with it. But basically, it sounds like if any furry uses the word Fursona in any products, that they're trying to sell, right? If Fursona Pins wanted to be evil, an evil company, they could go after them for trademark, because it sounds like the trademark office has kind of decided that Fursona Pins and Fursonas is kind of like very close in the business sense. So Fursona Pins has a sort of a trademark there. Don't be evil. Don't be evil. Do goodwill. Like, don't do the thing that we feared that the other guy outsider was going to do. As a final note, because we're at the 20-minute mark, and like the interesting thing is, like, I don't think, as I said, I don't think this was a patent troll or a trademark troll, because in the document that's in that description, you can basically see that they were that the product that they were thinking of selling under the name Fursona is sort of a luxury robe brand, where they are trying to, like, it's sort of, I can't read between the lines. There's sort of an ambiguity to it. They said that they were, like, it sounded like they were trying to sell robes that are based off of either A, characters that the quote unquote Fursonas group would have made, the business, this new business would have made, and they would have made like different animal character dogs, was the thing that was mentioned, and just have them, make robes based on those particular characters that this new business made, which technically is a Fursona. But I think when I'm reading between the lines, what they were trying to do is they're trying to make it so that a pet owner can share a picture of their pet, and they'll make a robe that has similar fur, quote unquote, fur patterns of their pet dog, right? To make sort of, the pet owner can sort of put on the fur of put like a robe that matches the fur of their furry companion. Furry friend and furry companion is a common pet name. We covered that in a previous video, ironically, about the Epstein files. Don't ask, you can go watch it. Seems like a weird thing, but yeah, we covered the concept of furry being used to describe pets. And if that is the case, and that is what the product line is going for, my suggestion is just like to the person who failed to trademark Fursona. I end my article with a suggestion. Why don't you trademark Petsona? You know what I mean? Like, I Googled it. It doesn't seem to exist. Having a Petsona, like, it starts with the same letter and it ends with Sana, so it sort of works. It's like it doesn't roll off like Fursona, like purr and fur kind of have the same, like, cadence, but like pet really doesn't. But it starts with a P, so purr and pet, like, sort of start with it. So it sort of works, Petsona. And if you call it Petsona, right, it distinguishes it. And it helps your brand, because it, like, as the person who's trying to make the patent says, I'm not furry, I'm not tied with the furry, my business is not tied with furry. Well, then making your thing named Fursona kind of makes that ambiguous. Like, the trademark people are doing you a favor, right? Because, like, you're like, because if you take like just think about it. It's like if he took on the name Fursona for his business, I'm assuming their business. We don't know the gender of the person doing the thing. If they're taking the word Fursona for their business, Fursona has a lot of ties to the furry fandom, and they would have to keep explaining. It's like, no, this is not a furry thing. No, this is not a furry thing. No, this is not a furry thing. And don't you think it'd be better if you came up with a name that didn't tie yourself to the furry fandom, so you don't have to explain, no, this isn't a furry thing? Petsona is perfect, right? It tells you what you do. You're making a robe that's based off of a pet, right? Not a like an anthro animal. It's perfect. Trademark Petsona. That's my suggestion to the person who tried to put this trademark in. You make a trademark for Petsona. Sell your luxury robes under Petsona, and if you do that, because I made that suggestion and I gave you the name, all I ask is that I get a robe. I don't wear robes, but Because it's like, why bother with that kind of thing? It's like, just go to bed. You don't have to put a robe on. Like, it's like if you live with somebody, maybe, you know, having decency to have a robe is great. But like if you don't live, it's like, don't even bother. But I'm just saying, like, free advice, take it or leave it. I think it's great. I think you should make it Pet Sauna, not Fursona. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Very interesting story. Deals with technical things, and it's very intriguing that like furry fandom dodged a bullet by having a furry trademark, something with the word Fursona in it. But now that we know that sort of trademark already exists, well, you know, when it comes to selling things in the furry fandom, just be careful. Because we know that now that you know, furry pins kind of has a big playing card that they can use against anybody they don't like in the furry fandom, and just go like, you can't use Fursona. The whole thing about trademark though is that you have to like enforce it a little bit in order to not lose it. So like maybe they're gonna have to every once in a while come down on somebody using Fursona, particularly if somebody uses the phrase Fursona pins. I think that they would definitely be more amped to go after somebody in the furry fandom who's selling pins if they use the term Fursona pins in any of their discussion of their own product, if they're not part of that organization. So just be aware, if you are in the pin business, to be careful, because there is a trademark on that. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Kick that like, kick a subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.